Okay, so in today's video, we are going to be covering the vim-surround plugin by T-Pope. This plugin is very useful and very powerful in the right hands. It essentially allows you to manipulate the surrounding characters around certain text. So you can do stuff like insert, single quotes around a word, or maybe parentheses. You could even put in HTML tags. You can do a lot with this plugin. One of my favorite features is you can put in function names and surround some text with a function, and you can do it on words or lines or paragraphs. Essentially anything that's considered a text object or vim-motion, you can manipulate the surrounding characters or tags around that text very easily with this plugin. So whatever plugin manager you use to install this, you know how to install Vim plugins. I trust you do. So just quickly gonna mention, I assume you do have some at least basic knowledge of Vim objects, like when I say delete in a word, you know what I mean. If you don't, I am planning on making a video on text objects and motions in general to cover just every single text object and motion in Vim. I'm still practicing it all, so I'll make a video about that soon. But anyways, let's go to the the options here. So ds is the simplest of the operations. So if say ds backtick, that deleted the surrounding backticks, the nearest surrounding backticks it could find. If I come up here in the middle or something and I say ds single quotes, it deletes the single quotes. Note if you do ds single quote on the actual quote, it deletes that pair, and that goes for all ops. Like ds backtick here, it will delete that backtick over there. Change surrounding, or cs, is also it changes the surrounding characters or tag or whatever. So if I say change surrounding backtick single quote, it changes the backticks to single quotes. If I do change surrounding single quotes parentheses, it changes the surrounding parentheses to the surrounding quotes to parentheses. If I say change surrounding parentheses double quotes, same thing. Pretty easy. So I'm just going to change surrounding quotes back to backticks. And then this is still here from last time. I'm just going to delete surrounding single quote. YS is for use surround, and this is used for inserting surroundings. So if I do use surround in a capital word, and then let's say, it exited. We're going to surround it with parentheses. So use surround in a capital word, parentheses. It surrounds the whole thing with parentheses. If I just say use surround in a word, parentheses, it surrounds the inner word with the little word with parentheses. So you can insert at different levels. It just depends on what object you specify. Obviously, the more comfortable you are with vim-motions or vim-motions and text objects, the easier it will be for you to insert certain things in the particular position you want to. And then a useful subcommand is YSS, which is to surround the line. So let's say I wanted to surround the line with a function. That would be YSS F, and it brings up this prompt at the bottom where I can type in function name. Let's say foobar is the name of my function, and it surrounds the whole line with that function. That feature I find so cool. I use it more often than not. It really is just so cool. Okay, and let's see. I add this example sentence here. Let's say you wanted to surround this particular sentence with quotation marks. You'd say you surround a sentence double quotes, and that surrounds the sentence with double quotes. Just had that there as an example. And then some variants. Okay, so there's the Y capital S and Y capital SS. So Y capital S or Y shift S will put the surrounding characters on their own line. So if I try to surround this line, it'll put the character above and the closing character below. So actually, let me do it with the word first. So if I do surround in a word with closing parentheses, it put the opening parentheses on this line, the word itself on its own line, and then the closing the closing parentheses on its own line. Okay. The same thing with YSS, except YSS acts similar to this YSS, meaning it just affects one line. So if you do Y shift SS parentheses, it knows just to do the entire line, which is pretty sweet. I think if I do Y capital S 2 words parentheses, it auto indents. I'm not 100% sure if it does this by default. I think you do need to have auto indent on, but I think if you just play around, you'll find settings that match what you need. My settings match what I need quite fine. So the next step is going into visual mode. So in visual mode, if I press V, I'm now in visual mode and can select stuff visually. Let's say I have this visual selection. If I press Shift S and a character, it will surround the selection with that character. So if I do Shift S parentheses, okay, everything is okay. Let me undo that. Let me just do an easy one. If I do a visual like that, Shift S parentheses, it's okay. So what was looking weird was it is deleting stuff. Oh, it's not deleting stuff. My bad. It just looked weird because of this thing. It surrounded the visual selection with basically parentheses. I got confused. My bad. Sorry. And so Shift S pretty much does the same thing in visual mode. And then in line visual mode, for those of you who don't know, you can access line visual mode with Shift V, and just jumping around, moving up and down however you would. It selects the entire line. So in line visual mode, you have two mappings. So the first one is normal, Shift S. So if it is Shift S parentheses, it puts the opening surrounding on its own line and the closing surrounding on its own line. Again, depending on your indent settings, it will decide, where if it'll indent this last guy or not. So you can do Shift S and it will do what you expect it to do. But again, depending on your indentation settings, it also provides a GS setting. So if I do GS and that to suppress auto indent, but again, I don't know. I can't get suppressed indent to work for me. Maybe it'll work for you, but if it's something you need, just know it's there. And then we have block visual mode. So block visual mode, for those of you who don't know, you can access by doing Control V. And now I'm in block visual mode and I can select blocks. But if you notice, when I go on these empty lines and I'm spamming L, I can't really go any further. And if I'm, say, on this insert line, I can't really go any further than insert. This is the default way block visual works. Block visual selection works. And this will be important for the GS command. So by default, the S command sort of does what you expect it to do. So if I select this block here, Shift S and then close parentheses, it will surround each line with the opening and closing set of whatever surrounding you picked. So each line has an opening and closing parentheses. But you see on these empty lines that it just closes what was on the empty lines, which was basically nothing. And it's not really even. It closes up until it's not even. This essentially is what I'm trying to say. So the plugin provides a GS mapping, which in order to get it to work, you need to set the setting. So if I do set virtual edit equal block, right? Now whenever I enter block visual mode, I'm not limited to whatever's on the line. It's an actual square block. So if I select a block and then do G, Shift S, parentheses, it will, well, put opening and closing characters on every single line. This line over here is one line. It's just, it's now gone over. If I undo that and just make an easier selection, and if I do, what is it, G Shift S, it will, yeah, opening and closing pair on each line, and it's actually a proper block. I don't actually use that much. I don't have cases where I need to use it, so yeah. Okay, so insert mode, there are some mappings to insert surroundings, and they do have stuff in the docs. It does say experimental. I couldn't really get it to work properly. There was unexpected behavior, well, at least for me with my setup. So if you really want to find out about this, you can look in the docs, but I recommend other methods. In particular, there's a plugin called auto pairs, if I spelled that right, which basically, if I type that, it puts the closing thing, and usually that's pretty much, it's enough. And the plugin itself has extra features, which is way easier than this. That's if you're interested. But anyways, let's go on and talk about more of the details. So the targets, I've been using a lot of parentheses to target stuff, but you can do parentheses, curly brackets, square brackets, angle brackets. They work as expected. So if I want to surround this with, say, square brackets, I use surround in a word. Square brackets, it surrounds the thing with square brackets. If I want to surround, say, the paragraph with curly braces, I can use surround in a paragraph, curly braces, and that surrounds the thing with curly braces. Keep in mind, the indenting will work differently depending on what your indent settings are. Mine just happened to do this, which is fine. So as you notice, these are all the closing braces. If you do it with the closing brace, it does this, right? But if you do it with the opening brace, bracket, or parentheses or whatever, it puts a space in between the surrounding and the text. So that's the difference between the opening and the closing pairs. And then each of these, the parentheses, the brace, and the brackets, they each have an alias here. So if you don't want to type reach out and press this button here, for the curly brace, you can use surround in a word with Shift B, and it'll put braces there. That's if you want to use the aliases. And then we also have here the single quote, double quote, and backtick. They behave as expected. If I just come here and use surround in a word with single quotes, it does what you expect it to do. Only difference is when deleting and changing, these guys will be found on outside the line, but these guys won't. And what that means is, if I have some text here, right? And if let's see, if I YSS brace, not like that, or if I not Control V, let's Shift V and do this. There we go. That's what I wanted. And I put braces like that. I can delete surrounding braces, and that's pretty easy. What I can't do is the following. So if I go back Shift V and insert those guys, single quotes, and I try to delete surrounding single quotes, they won't get targeted. So that's what the difference between the quotes and backtick are compared to the braces and the brackets. Okay, now for some advanced stuff. HTML tags. Okay, so this is tags, or HTML tags. So if I try to insert a tag, so if you want to insert a tag, you have to use T. So instead of saying use surround in a word with, say, single quote, it would be with a T instead. So use surround in a word with T. So YSIWT. And it opens up this prompt here at the bottom where you can type literally anything, and it will place that as an HTML tag. So if I say something like some tag, it places it as an HTML or XML tag, depending on whatever you're programming in. And that's pretty cool. And in much the same way that I can insert, I can delete surrounding T for tag. That just targets the nearest tag. There's no way to really specify how far away the tag, as far as I'm aware, you can't specify how far away you want to delete the tag. You can change surrounding tag with another tag. So let's say div, right? That changes the surrounding tag to another tag of div, or you can change surrounding tag with single quotes, or change surrounding quotes with T for tag, and you can type in something here again, H1, right? Now, if you know, this is more of your text object knowledge. If I wanted to surround this whole thing, I could say YSI capital W. Okay, wait 1 second. Okay, I want to surround this tag, this whole tag, with another tag of div. So it'd be YSIW tag, and that says you surround inner big word with a tag, and so I want to surround it with a div. I put in div, and you notice when I'm typing in the tags, I don't put in the closing bracket. That's because you don't need to. Because you don't need to. You just type it, and it's as easy as that. So, like I said, if you do DST, it just deletes the innermost tag. So you can't really delete div from in here, as far as I know. To delete div, you have to go on either one of them and just say DST, and that deletes both div parts, which is usually enough for me. You find one, you delete both. Okay, so just a note, it ignores like the single tags, like if there's a BR or just a slash. It won't get confused, and so it also won't get confused with links like the A tags where it's just a single tag. It for the most part knows what it's doing. So yeah, so delete that surrounding tag. HTML tags, quite fun, quite useful. And then some special, I guess, notes for DS. As you've been seeing, we've been pressing DS and then what we want to delete. We haven't really been specifying inner word or whatever. That's because I suppose it just searches for the nearest neighbor, the nearest set of tags it needs to delete and delete. So you never have to really use ops for DS. But one interesting thing to note is, let's say I inserted single quotes here. If you do if you do change surrounding quotes with S, it changes the surrounding quotes to spaces. Well, that's what it says, but it also then inputs a leading space here. So in some way you can make CS behave like DS, but I never really do that. It's just worth noting that they are interchangeable. CS can be used sort of as an alias for some DS ops, but I never usually do that. Just worth noting. And then P. Oh yeah, P. So P is the paragraph text object. Note with P that whenever you insert or delete stuff, it might remove or add lines. So that's really the only note. I think if I surround in a paragraph with parentheses, it added, let's see, and then if I control R, yeah, it added new lines basically. And that's kind of, it's expected. Just, yeah, it will add new lines. And sometimes it'll remove new lines. So if I delete surrounding parentheses, it removes those lines. It mentions that in the docs, so I felt like I should mention it as well. So some interesting stuff we have here is a few more. So if I do something like this text and I surround this line with braces, well, not like that. If I surround this line with braces. If I'm being honest, I do a lot of stuff in line visual mode because usually it's easier for me if I'm seeing things. So if I have curly braces, yeah, usually this is what you want in what you do a lot in C code is have these curly braces on their own lines and have the text in here indented. But there's a special key map to do this specifically for key braces, and that is a control brace. So if I do, you have to have your selection ready. So let's say I'm in visual mode and I do Shift S, I'll do Shift S, control square bracket. So Shift S, control square bracket. So Shift S, control square bracket, and it automatically does that. In visual mode, I guess it doesn't really make much sense, but let's say I do YSS shift bracket. Okay, well, it doesn't do it for line mode, I suppose. If I do YSIP control, like that, YSIP control square bracket, that works. So you have to select the paragraph. It just is, you just got to know the difference between the text objects. So that's for the special curly braces. If you code in C a lot, I guess that might be useful. I don't do much C coding. Another thing is back to the HTML tag. So if I insert a tag here, say div, right? And let's say the div had something like, I'll actually add it. So if I change surrounding tag with another tag and say h1, and I want to add attributes to the tag, you simply just add the attributes here. So height equals 5 and enter. And it just knows that attributes always go in the opening one. So that's how you can add attributes to tags. What you can also do is, let's say I wanted to change the thing without removing the tags. So change the tag without removing the attribute. So change surrounding tag with a tag and say div, and the attributes stay here. But let's say I wanted to change the surrounding tag and also remove the attributes. Then I'll do change surrounding tag with tag, and let's say we want a paragraph. Then you have to put close bracket, and that just deletes all the attributes in the list. It's simple, but usually powerful enough that it just works. Okay, and then another thing is control T. So usually you never have this case where you have a div on one line. Typically, what we do have is if you want to have your div appear, the opening div on top and the closing div at the bottom, you would do use surround in a paragraph with the tag and then div, and that pretty much it does what you want. You surrounded the paragraph with divs. I think if you do use surround a paragraph with a tag, do div, okay, it doesn't indent. I can't remember what you have to do to indent it. Oh, I'm an idiot. So use surround in a paragraph, control T, and this will force the indent. No, it doesn't. I'm not gonna lie, I don't do this much in HTML. I don't do much HTML, if I'm being honest. I'm trying to think, would it be use surround 2 words, control T, div? Okay, that works. So you have to be very specific about the text objects that you use. Usually the indenting isn't much of a problem for me, but if you really want to force the indent, this is how you go about it. So control T, force 1 forces it on it, even though I selected, if I do this use surround 2 words with a tag, and if I do div, this won't force the divs on their own line. But if I do the same selection, so use surround 2 words, control tag, and do div, it own line and indentation. Cool. I think the indentation also, a lot of this depends, the indent behavior depends on your default indent options, I'm not gonna lie. And yeah, I'm not really too to show all the behavior depending on the settings is a bit much. I assume if you are that particular, you'll find out what you need to do. And then the last thing we're gonna cover here are functions, which is like my favorite thing about this plugin. So as I showed earlier, you can use surround in a word, and if you press F, you can surround the inner word with a function. Normal functions usually look like this. So that's little f. If I use surround inner word with Shift F, capital F, and you type in the function name, it puts a little space in between the contents. And then the last one is Control F, which is for, I think it's either Lisp or Prolog, that like functional programming languages, it will put the function name inside the brackets. So if I do use surround in a word, Control F, and then function name sumfunc, I guess. It puts the function name inside the brackets. Some programming languages typically do their business this way, so that's why that is there. I'm just gonna open some lines here for some space, and then but oh yeah, if I can just, okay, so one thing to note is that let's say we inserted a function called main. You can't directly just delete surrounding function. It doesn't really have that option, or change surrounding function to something else. You can't really do that. It's restrictive in that case. So and then the final thing is the S. So what this does is, like it says here, leading space is added. Let's say I do delete surrounding brackets. Okay, so you can't do the delete. Say change surrounding parentheses and say S. It removes, it replaces the parentheses with a space, and at the end of the line there's no space. Okay, so it essentially, as I showed earlier, acts as a pseudo delete, but it has the space here, as opposed to if I did ds parentheses, that removes the space. Okay, and in much the same way, I can use surround in a word, and I hit S, it puts a leading space, and it doesn't do double spaces. It puts a leading space but no space at the end. It is like a super, well, not a super fringe use case. I just typically don't have much use for it. I don't have issues where I use it that often, but yeah, just some word to you. But coming back to this function thing, depending on what language you use, maybe if you use Python or something, it might be helpful for you to map that. So if I do nmap, I don't know, so what key can I map? Let's do Control P. So if I nmap Control P to basically, let's see this, percent shift find, and then H, delete in a word, and then let's say something like L, and then maybe delete surrounding parentheses. I think that works. So if we do that, then Control P should basically delete your function. And you can do something, a similar mapping for changing surrounding function. Again, I haven't really used it because I usually don't have like much inclination to change of. Usually I'll just go back to the function name and change the function name using normal key mappings. It's not that much. I think if you do if you do that, you can get to the function name easy and just change the function yourself. So, but that's an interesting thing. Maybe I'll add a mapping in the future, but yeah. that is all I have for today. I don't know if there's anything else I missed. Besides the mapping, I think if I do, just want to see. So yeah, if I paste that, for those of you who wanted it, this is the mapping I used. You can see how easy it is to do. So I did deleted surrounding. You can also just make this change surrounding. So if I, you know what I mean. So if this was delete surrounding, it deleted surrounding. If it's change surrounding, it'll enter you into change surrounding mode, and you can enter whatever you want, you know, brackets, parentheses, whatever, if you really want a mapping to do that. So yeah. Anyways, cheers.